Did you rest well? Were you exhausted? We keeping you well engaged? No feedback?
Even with sleeping considerably less, I feel much more in balance than I did before.
What do you attribute that to? It's just like the overall experience, or some particular part was strengthening for you?
I attribute that to the social time, being around more people, the yoga in the morning.
Yoga in the morning.
And the more, say, and I suppose let's just say that introspective experience of it all.
Okay.
I know there's many other things you could call it, but I'll just say introspective.
Okay. I hope I didn't intimidate anybody with saying get up early. Students aren't known for getting up early, but it's helpful. We're still waiting. Any other feedback over here? This, right behind you.
I really enjoyed looking and I think interacting with the cows and peacocks.
Yeah.
I've never seen in my life how fearless peacocks are, because peacocks, they run away from people. And I was able to get a picture with a peacock yesterday.
You did?
I did.
How many? Because often they're in groups.
There was just one peacock.
One guy, okay.
And I think it was really
with his fan out and everything?
No, not yet.
Oh.
And I think that was amazing.
This is the season. They like strutting around. It's mating season. Over here? You want to share something? Or you're just stretching?
No, I'm just stretching.
Okay. It's 8:15. I like to begin. Because the beginning part is a little review from yesterday. So if people aren't here for a little review from yesterday, I think that's okay. Should we begin? You want to do some preliminary housekeeping things?
Maharaj, I will announce at the end because it's better if everybody is here for that.
Okay. Okay. So is there anybody with us today that wasn't with us yesterday? You were all here. Okay. So the theme is the same starting slide here, the art of meditation. Yesterday we began the first of the 3-part workshop on the art of letting go. And the second one, which is what we're going to do this morning, is the gift of the present. But if you're going to let go, where do you go? So you go to the present. But you can't go to the present if you're holding on to the past, or your feelings that you don't like something and it's giving you a negative emotion that's coloring the mind. And so you can't be present until you let go. So this is a little review. There's some slides we didn't get to finish because of the time and circumstance. This lady isn't letting it go. So one of the messages of let it go is rather than something that happened, it could even be, years ago, it can be in childhood, or it can be a moment ago, or today, or this past week. Time isn't the factor, it's holding on. And when you hold on, the feeling magnifies, and many times people say something or do something in a reactionary place that later on they regret. And sometimes people don't regret, but common for conscious people is a non-thoughtful expression is a reactive one, like fight or flight. It's built into the nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system is, here's some challenge and you oppose it, or you leave the place. And it's involuntary. The parasympathetic system is, you don't have to choose, it rules you. All the organs of the body, the adrenal system, the eyes dilate, the heart beats, and you don't have to say, okay, heart, you can start beating now. Okay, veins, you can dilate, please. It just happens when emotions rule and we become reactionary. So letting go permits one to go forward, be present. That's our morning topic today. In Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 1 of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna exhibits this characteristic of impatience, and it's expressed. And Krishna admonishes him, if this rules your life, Arjuna, you're not going to make wise decisions. You'll be in this reactionary mode. So it's advised, an antidote for that is pause or deliberate, or the expression I like is you enter into this reflective space. Rather than reacting to the situation, you reflect, you go to the mode of goodness. And you practice going to the mode of goodness, and it becomes second nature. Practice, 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 practice. Here's a situation that's troubling, disturbing, challenging, dangerous. If you practice go into a deliberative space, you go there very quickly. While we're waiting for people to drift in, I'll just tell a little story. One time, it was in Maryland actually, I was attending a retreat that was the whole weekend was just focusing on mantra meditation. And one day we were spending the whole day, from morning till evening, late afternoon at least, in mantra meditation, just absorption. So at a certain point I was getting a little fidgety, and so I went for a little walk. And we were in a forested area, and I was walking, and I got a little distracted by, over there I saw a path in the woods. And then over there, not where the path was, I saw a deer. And you know what it's like. The deer looks at you, and you look at the deer, and the deer looks at you, and it's like stare down program. But there was no path. So then this thought occurred, why is there a path over here? And it's because somebody went up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down, and so there's this path. That's how the path got there. And so it's naturally you go where the path is, instead of over the forest and through the woods to grandmother's house we go. So there was this deer. So then this thought occurred, let me walk slowly towards the deer, and see how long it takes for the deer to get startled and run. So it didn't take too long because there was this big log that was in the path, and I looked on the other side of the big log, and there was this fantastic turtle that had the back of the turtle was like so many different colors. It's really beautiful. And when I was looking at the turtle, the deer ran away. Then I realized I got distracted. And I certainly didn't go up and down and make a path. But that's how paths form. And once the path is formed, the path of go into this reflective space when something happens that's troubling. Go into mode of goodness, reflective space, and consider the situation. And then that puts you in the moment. At least you have access to the moment instead of the reacting space. Now here's a little image, and it's not the glass is half full, the glass is half empty message. This is something that was shared with me. I don't know what the professor was the teacher of, but he held up a glass like this in front of the classroom. And for sake of time, I'm not going to ask you what he asked the students, but he asked the students, how much does this weigh? And somebody said different numbers, 50 grams, 75 grams, 125 grams. So then after that little exchange, what would happen if I just held on to this glass with water in it for 3 minutes? The answer is nothing. And then what would happen if I held this up in the air for 1 hour or then longer, 3 hours? What would happen? Your arm probably get a little tired. And then what would happen if I held this glass for 24 hours? You probably feel some numbness in your arm and maybe worse. Then he asked a question, so in those different intervals of time, did the glass get heavier or did the weight stay the same? And they said, well, obviously the weight stayed the same. You're just holding it longer. And then the teacher said, and thoughts are like that too. This is the letting go message. If you let go, the weight of something doesn't crush you or make you feel pain or maybe paralyze you. Letting go allows you to move on. You acknowledge there's some weight in this glass, and you acknowledge that there's some feeling that's unpleasant. And that's the nature of this, it's the nature of duality, sometimes and sometimes. It's Chapter 2, Bhagavad Gita. The place where we are is a place of duality. Sometimes happiness, sometimes distress, sometimes heat, sometimes cold, sometimes honor, sometimes dishonor. It's just the nature of the place. Hang around and you'll see both sides. Wherever there's something, its opposite is there because it's the nature of the place. So when there's negative emotions because things happen that trouble the mind, letting go permits you to not be weighted by that negative experience and the negative emotion. Then now comes, remember that from yesterday, that pyramid. At the top is higher consciousness and at the bottom is shame, guilt, anger, and those negative emotions. So when there's higher consciousness, then you can address, you can be present, you will be present. So, according to Bhagavad Gita, there's a verse where Krishna says this, but rather than citing the verse, at the bottom is dull matter, and it says, Krishna says, the senses are superior to dull matter. The mind is superior to the senses, the intelligence is superior to mind, and far more subtle and superior to all of them is the soul. So, if one's consciousness, which is of the soul, is connected to who we really are, and that's, in big letters, who we really are, if we're connected to who we really are, then there's this alignment procedure where the intelligence gives direction to the mind, gives direction to the senses, and our interactions with dull matter are in alignment with who we really are. And the converse is, if we don't have a clear understanding of who we really are, but we have a mind that's colored or polluted or toxic stuff in the mind, material conceptions of who we are when that's not who we are, then there's alignment is missing. You won't find that connection with inner peace. Here's an illustration of that same message from Bhagavad Gita. There's 5 horses, so there's 5 senses. It's a metaphor, straight from the Upanishads, that the steering mechanism, the reins here, that's the mind, and the intelligence is meant to give direction to the horses through the reins. But if there's disorder, if there's not alignment with the senses, the mind, and the intelligence, then it's a scary ride. In the metaphor from the Upanishads, the wheels are karma, that's what we move on. Our past choices bring us our present karma. And we move by the agency of time. Last night we had, for those of you that weren't with us, we had this little teeny discussion about time. And I was thinking some more about it this morning. Kala is the Sanskrit word for time. There are 5 topics in Bhagavad Gita, and one of those 5 is time. Because without time, nothing happens. Or with time, everything that happens because time moves matter. Something I didn't say yesterday. This is extra, but time moves in cycles. The Vedic conception of time is matter moves in cycles, history repeats itself, there's this saying, and it's true. So there's small units of time, and there's medium, there's big. So with minutes, seconds, minutes, hours, 12 hours morning, 12 hours evening, afternoon, evening, one day, days into weeks, weeks into months, months into seasons, seasons into years, years into decades, decades into centuries, centuries into ages of mankind. They all cycle to a big wheel of ages of mankind from the Vedic perspective. And then so many of those 4 ages cycling, 1,000 of those makes a day of Brahma, and at the end of the day of Brahma is the night of Brahma, and there's a partial devastation. Some of you that are Western, you know Noah's Ark. It's the partial devastation story from the Old Testament. And then at the end of this night is the next day, and then there's again, the water recedes, and then and there's, really big cycles of time. But time moves matter. Like that little girl that was running around. One way of looking at it is she's going to age. She's a little girl, and Someday she's going to be a little older than a little girl, and so forth. So that's aging. But another way of looking at it, the Vedic way of looking at it, is cycles of time. The soul has been injected into the womb of the mother, and then the gestation period, the body appears at birth, and time is moving in a cycle. And after a certain time, that life is over, and then again the soul moves on to the next womb of the next mother, whatever the species, whatever upper, lower, middle arrangement, depending upon karma, and then time keeps moving everything. So aging is one way of looking at it, another is time is moving. And our process of meditation, when it's well honed, connects you with that place that's beyond the cycles of past, present, and future time. Anyway, it's the nature of mantra. It's that quality of sound vibration. So this is the last slide from yesterday that we didn't get to touch on because we ran out of time. And at the end, our facilitator is going to remind us of this and take us through the letting go exercise together at the end of this morning's session. So that's a little review of the letting go. And now this morning, we're going to discuss part 2, which is the gift of the present. If we've been able to let go, we can access the gift of the present. And our facilitator is going to help us with the thought experiment. You want the microphone?
No, once more, can you hit the...
What would you like?
Can you hit the...
Yeah, you want this? Okay.
So, let's do a quick thought experiment. Okay, let's take a piece of pen and paper and write down everything that is coming to your mind right now. Not everything, but write down whatever immediately is coming to your mind. Let's make it more clear. So write down 5 things that immediately come.
Ah, that's good.
Everything is a lot. 5 things that come to your mind immediately. You can take your phone and write down if you don't have a piece of paper. Okay, I would like some volunteers to share some things that came to mind. Anybody? Over there? Rose?
Fortunately, one of the thoughts was, what do I have to do next week? Which is not being in the present.
Okay, yeah, so that's the point. So we will take some volunteers to say what came to mind and see which, is it in the past, is it in the present, is it in the future? So that's in the future. Anybody else? No thoughts? We are all thoughtless?
I often fall asleep during lectures.
What's that?
I often fall asleep during lectures.
Yeah, that's the thought that came to your mind?
Yes. That is both the present, past, and future.
I'm thinking about the class I just taught.
Okay. It's in the recent past. How about you?
I'm moving in 2 weeks and I was thinking about my packing and how I might approach it.
Okay, that's in the future again. That.
I was thinking if Maharaji was gonna do kirtan or not. Yeah. So in December I was in Chicago and then you did one kirtan. It was Jai Radha Madhava. I just loved it. So good. I'm thinking about that if you're gonna do that or not again.
That's a future thought.
Behind you. The girl behind you. You had your hand up there. Sorry. Here, Amit.
About food, breakfast.
Okay.
But
I won't lie, I'm also thinking about it.
I woke up a little early, so like trying to beat the sleep. I woke up around like 3:30 to 3. So just trying to beat up the sleep till the class comes to an end.
Alright, that's in the future, yeah.
That's in the past.
Oh, no, he's thinking about food, breakfast.
Oh, okay.
I think I forgot your name. Behind Amit, you had same thing. Okay, lots of people are thinking about breakfast. So basically, the three modes of nature Maharaj took us through: darkness, passion, and goodness. So darkness is in the past, and passion is in the future, and goodness is in the present. So a lot of the examples, very few of them were in the present. It's very difficult to be in the present. So this is just an exercise to illustrate.
I purposefully left this blank because when we start, anything can go there into the mind. But commonly, if anything can go into the mind, it does, rather than being present. This is a cartoon, a rat race cartoon, where the cartoonist is depicting passion, trying to become an enjoyer, finding happiness, search for happiness. Generally speaking, it's something outside of ourselves in material life. A little saying, similar: success does not bring happiness, rather happiness brings success. Or happiness is success, or success is happiness. And common, it's the mode of passion, is happiness is going to happen soon. I got my plan, I'm going to do this and that and the other thing, and happiness is going to happen. For those of you that are interested, the Vedic picture of the universe is where we are. This Earth planet is in the middle region, and predominant mode in the middle region is passion. And in the lower region, the dark place, the mode of ignorance. And in the higher regions, heavenly and even beyond heavenly, is mode of goodness. And being in the moment, being present, is mode of goodness, characteristically. Now we're ready for our facilitator one more time. We're giving him some exercise this morning.
I didn't do yoga today. So yeah, we will do this exercise. Please again write it down and or discuss in pairs. So it is powerful to share. It reinforces what you wrote down. So two things. One is what I wish was different in my life, and two, what do I worry about? Again, maybe write down 3 to 5 things in each category.
And share with someone.
Yes, once you write it down, please share it with the person next to you. In the first question, what I wish was different in my life, was is the operative word, so it's in the past. What do I worry about, that's in the future. So surely all of us have at least a few things in each category. Okay, yeah, please discuss in pairs now. I'll give you a couple of minutes. Let's keep this in mind, and we'll come back to it during the meditation.
Good. So just developing the same theme, the gift of being present. An illusion is when I change my circumstances, I'll be happy. Common illusion. And then the reality picture is when I change my perspective. Circumstances don't. Suppose you go from circumstance A to B, you go from this place to that place. You bring your mind with you. It's the same mind, and then the circumstance may externally be different, but The mind isn't different. So it's the perspective that brings happiness. Then, because that happiness is something within, and it's available when the mind is clear, the mind is pure. Meditation, by its very nature, helps us connect with that happiness that's within. If you are doing meditation effectively, you slow the mind down to the point where you're connecting with that happiness that's within. This is the little saying. Rather than nostalgically living in the past or passionately living in the future, happiness can be accessed right here. In the moment, in the present. Here's a text from Bhagavad Gita, final chapter. Krishna says, one who thus is transcendently situated at once realizes the supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. I put that in different color letters because we're going to speak more about that. Becomes fully joyful. He never laments, that's the past, or desires to have anything, that's the future. He is equally disposed toward every living entity. In that state, he attains pure devotional service unto me. So, with the yellow highlight, that's he never laments or desires to have anything. That's being present. And one who has become successful at that, that's what yoga is meant to do. There's a joyfulness that's within, and it's really who we are by nature. The Sanskrit terminology is Satchit Ananda, that's who we are. We are joyful by nature. Chapter 6, Bhagavad Gita, for those of you that took yoga classes yesterday and today, or at your home you do yoga. This is from that's very same yoga system, chapter 6. You can look it up later when you get your Bhagavad Gita in your hand. In the stage of absorption, one's mind is completely restrained from material mental activities by practice of yoga. This perfection is characterized by one's ability to see the self by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the self, in that joyous state, same color as the previous verse. One is situated in boundless transcendental happiness, realized through transcendental senses. Established thus, one never departs from the truth, and upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of greatest difficulty. This indeed is actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contact. So unpacking this is that same, there's dull matter, and above the dull matter there's senses. That's material contact. And above that is the mind, and above the mind is intelligence, and above the intelligence is the soul. So the joyfulness is of the soul. It's not senses meeting sense objects. The more you have, the more you're happy, but it's not so. Or you do it this way instead of that way, and if you change your circumstance and happiness comes, it's not so. It's from within. Living in the present, a nice saying, forget yesterday. It has already forgotten you. Don't sweat tomorrow. You haven't even met. Instead, open your eyes and your heart to a truly precious gift today. Same living in the present message that we've been emphasizing. this is encouragement. Learn from the past, prepare for the future, and live in the present. This person, Thomas Merton, he is one of the translators of Bhagavad Gita. Maybe you know of him. A transcendentalist perspective author. This is where our body is. It's in the present. But sometimes the mind, too often the mind is not present. It's somewhere over here or somewhere over there. And meditation means bring it to the present. And that's the mode of goodness. So here's an interesting image. A doorway inside the mind is all kinds of things. And it's a processor of past experiences. It's a place where some plan for future enjoyment is made. Meditation means to bring that to a quiet place and be in the moment or be present. The mind, according to Bhagavad Gita, it's thinking, feeling, and willing. It's a storehouse of all those things. And commonly, if the mind is not restrained or controlled or purified, then it's an endless stream of desires, thoughts, and impressions. And planning for a better set of impressions going into the future. A little cartoon. The old lady is looking at the young lady saying, if only I had her figure. The young lady is looking at the old lady's jewelry and saying, if only I had her diamonds. The young man is looking at the old man thinking, if only I had his money. And the old man is thinking, if only I had his wife. Grass is always greener. You know that expression. Even Arjuna, so Arjuna is the main person in Bhagavad Gita pictured here, and Krishna speaking Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. And again, this is chapter 6. This is the yoga system that you're somewhat familiar with, asanas, etc. Those of you that are from India, you know the verse, Chanchala, Himana, Krishna. Chanchala means flickering. Translation. The mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and balava, very strong. O Krishna, to subdue it, I think, is more difficult than controlling the mind. Because Krishna is describing to Arjuna this meditation process. And Arjuna says, whoa, controlling the mind? It's more difficult to control the mind than control the wind. And we can't control the wind. How can you control the mind? Buddha said something similar. It is a man's own mind, not his enemy or foe, that lures him to evil ways. So that means there's contemplation of something inside before you begin doing something outside. A bad habit, or anger, or speaking harshly, or something that's hurtful to others. Nature, the resources of nature, exploiting for greed and lust, etc. It's inside. Here is a statement from another text, Bhagavatam, where Prahlad Maharaj, some of you know, from India you know who is Prahlad. He's speaking to his father. My dear father, please give up your demoniac mentality. Do not discriminate in your heart between enemies and friends. Rather, make your mind equipoised toward everyone. Underlined. Except for the uncontrolled and misguided mind, there is no enemy within this world. Enemy is within. When one sees everyone on the platform of equality, one then comes to the position of purity, or peace, or mode of goodness, or real happiness. Again, 6th chapter Bhagavad Gita, same source. For him, or for one, who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. Same message, same message. All yoga systems require, there's different methods, techniques, etc., but they all require control of the mind and senses. Without control of the mind and senses, you can't do well in school. You can't do well in life. You can't do well in anything. The uncontrolled mind. You're always disturbed. We don't like it. This slide has something to do with yesterday. Yesterday, we didn't get into it, but yesterday was in our mantra, Hari Rama, Hari Rama, Rama Rama, Hari Hari. Yesterday was the appearance of Rama. And the person who told the story of Rama, it's an ancient text called the Ramayana, was this person here. His name previously was Ratnakar, and he was a dacoit. He was a plunderer. And so one day, as he was roaming through the forest, he saw Narada, a holy man, a sage, a wise man. And he came, as a plunderer, he came raising his sword ready to chop him. Give me all your money. And he said, I don't have any. I'm a renunciate, I don't have anything. But it's in the course of the dialogue, he said, but supposing, are you aware that when you do these things of robbing people and plundering people and chopping people, that you're going to get some karma for that? Huh? And anyway, there was a long exchange back and forth. And then just being in the presence of this elevated person, Ratnakar said, well, how do I get free from the reactions of what I've already done? And he said, you can take this mantra. And he was so corrupted he couldn't say it. So he gave him another one, Mara. Mara means death in Sanskrit. Oh, I can say that one. So he said Mara, 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 and eventually it became Rama, 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 and he became purified just by saying that sound of Rama's name. And then eventually he became so elevated that he wrote in beautiful Sanskrit language the life of Rama. But he was, before that, he wasn't in a state of mindfulness. He was always greedy and in big anxiety. Now, I hope the sound works. This is from it's interesting. It's a cartoon for children, I think, but big kids can appreciate it. It's from the United Kingdom, and towards the end there's a picture of a center that George Harrison some years ago, donated to ISKCON, and now it's a place of, many people visit there, and it's a nice place, just outside London. So you'll notice the British accent, and towards the end you'll see that house that George Harrison donated, at least like a drawing of it. So the life of Ryan, here we go.
So, Ryan's having a great time. He's never been so happy in his life before. He got married to his girlfriend, had a few kids, and they go on holiday every year. He still goes flying now and then. But that's not why he's happy. His problems haven't ended at all. It's just that now he doesn't let them bother him. After all, nothing can really affect you without your permission, can it? So, how did it all happen? Well, Ryan decided to go deeper into this spiritual practice and take the bull by the horns. Of course he gets the idea. We're spiritual beings that inhabit different bodies according to our karma and desires. So then he thought, that's great, but what can I do about it? So, he picked up the bag of the Gita once again and learned that the next step was to try some mantra meditation. Mantra means a spiritual sound that elevates the consciousness beyond the mind to the level of the spirit. So he did it for a few minutes, and he loved it. So he kept doing it every day, and felt that it helped him rise above everyday worries and focus on something higher, sort of like a divine consciousness. But then he thought, what is this divine consciousness? Is it just some sort of hazy idea or a white light? Or could there possibly be more? All this amazing knowledge. He wondered, who can I speak to find out more? So, he looked in the back of his book, found the nearest centre, which was in Watford, and turned up at Bhaktivedanta Manor to find out more. Believe it or not, somehow he even stumbled across some monks. Was the universe talking to him? They explained some super duper top secret stuff. We're all part and parcel of a divine consciousness, just like the sun rays are part of the sun. Same quality of heat and light, but in a teeny tiny quantity. The mantra, he realised, although sounding a little bit hocus pocus, had a deep meaning. That it was a spiritual sound, not mundane, and he felt good because it actually helped him connect to the divine consciousness. They explained that this connection with the divine is called yoga. When one establishes this connection, he becomes undisturbed by problems that come along in life and is peaceful at all times. Further practice elevates one's consciousness to the spiritual platform, where one attains unlimited spiritual powers. Whoa! So, Ryan's journey continues. What will he discover next? What is this divine consciousness? Could it be a person? Maybe this supreme divine consciousness is coming from a blue boy who plays the flute and is called Krishna. You never know what to expect. This spiritual path is exciting, adventurous, enlightening, and can do wonders for you. And all the magic is hidden in the Bhagavad Gita. So, why not give it a read? So that's Ryan and his life. But I guess the real question is, what about you? Where will your spiritual path lead you? What will you discover? Maybe one day you will join Ryan in his animated journey. The possibilities are endless.
Cute, huh? The anecdote at the end of this is the story of what Ryan found, etc., etc. It's not something that's imagination, not a mythology or fairy tale or something. this, I've been referring to it commonly as the place of higher consciousness. And it's real. Just like our discussion yesterday, I enjoy the topic of time because it's mind expanding. And there is such a thing as time that has no beginning and end. You know, that's beyond our experience presently. But this being present is the doorway to that which has no beginning and end. The mode of goodness, just like in the back of the room, there's, well over here too, there's windows. Just yesterday there was a peacock that people were checking out because he was checking us out. So where there's a wall, you don't know what's on the other side of the wall. But where there's a window, you can see what's on the other side. Similarly, the mode of goodness permits one to get a picture of what's transcendental, what's beyond the temporary. Transcendental means beyond all that's temporary, what's out there. Just a little sharing. A few years ago, I was a little boy, and I had this idea that there's a reality beyond everyday stuff. So I asked Mom and Dad, is there reality beyond everyday stuff? And you know what I got as an answer? A pat on the head, saying, oh, isn't that nice? Go ahead, say it to our neighbors when they come in to pay a visit. It was so humiliating. Now, if they knew, they could have told me, but they didn't know. So I don't blame them because they didn't know. But there is, since little, there's another reality. You know, with capital R reality, beyond all that's temporary. Take away all that's temporary, what's left? And it's who, we're part of that. It's who we really are. And there's this realm of higher consciousness. And that's home. That's where we belong. And that's the place of happiness. And I want to be in the place of happiness. I'll live a responsible life in this world, in the world of the temporary, and the duality that goes on here and there, and this side, that's fine. I'll be responsible for my past choices of free will. And now I know where I want to go. I want to be part of that higher reality place, that higher consciousness place. I know that it exists. And from mantra meditation, I can access it, and the more and more and more, by maturing in that mantra meditation process, it becomes my inner life while living in the world. It just connects you to that beyond the temporary place. So, a place that is beyond any of our current material conceptions, a place without anxiety, stress, misery, and free from suffering. Suffering, from yesterday's discussion. Buddhism says suffering is caused by desire. The Bhagavad Gita says suffering is caused by ignorance that has us desire ignorantly, and then ignorant activity and suffering. So the problem is not desire, the problem is ignorance. So when the ignorance is removed, what's left? The place of higher consciousness. It's who we really are. Another little sharing, because I think we have the time. From time to time, I'm asked to speak about stress management. The first time I was asked to do that was the University of Minnesota. I believe there's some University of Minnesota from Mankato students with us. A group of you came. So Carlson School of Business. Those of you from Mankato, you may know Mr. Carlson was a big, successful businessman, and he contributed money to the University of Minnesota to open the Carlson School of Business. Humble man. So it was just opening, and I was asked to be the guest speaker. And it was a 2-day seminar on stress management. So I figured out, boy, people that are doing business, they get stressed out. So I said, I can speak on it as long as I have permission to speak from a spiritual perspective. Because otherwise, don't invite me. So they said, sure. So a theme, beginning, then we went over there, then middle, and then we went over there. End is the best stress management, don't have any. And there is a place of no stress. That's this place of higher consciousness. But just supposing you're not there yet. So then you have to manage stress, and there's these things and those things and the other things that you can do for stress management. But while you're doing stress management, keep moving towards the place of no stress, because that's really the best of stress management. Place of higher consciousness. And it's accessible. Hey, don't take my word for it. Do a little experiment and see if it's like really there. It's really there. But you have to experiment. You have to experience it to know, is it really there or not? You can take somebody's word for it. That's fine too. But we don't want to just take somebody's word for it like that, Ryan, what does this mean to us? There's an image of Krishna in his activities in Vrindavan, River Jamuna, cows, moo. When we were waiting for some of you to come, I asked, what has been your experience so far? Somebody said, being with the cows was the best. And the cows are in the mode of goodness. They don't have teeth or claws. They're very peaceful. Moo. And so if we give kindness and affection to cows, you feel something. You feel something when you do that to anyone, and it's very special with cows. Anyway, Krishna likes cows. And we can access that place of higher consciousness through sound. It's built within the mantra. Now, I didn't prepare this slide, somebody else did. I don't know why they put the mantra in Chinese, but I thought I would leave it there. Anyone here from China that reads Chinese? Okay. That's the Maha Mantra in Chinese. It doesn't matter what the language is, because the sound vibration is what's effective. Even if you don't know what it means, no problem. The sound vibration is effective. Even the trees, or the insects, or anything that's alive, the sound vibration acts on that spiritual platform. It revives dormant spiritual consciousess naturally. And we're done for this morning session, except for our facilitated part. And then we're going to have some questions and answers at the end. But now we're doing the group meditation. Go ahead, take it away.
Alright, so let's do the group meditation like we did yesterday. We'll do an alignment exercise of the body, mind and spirit. And what Maharaj has been teaching yesterday and today, the art of letting go and the gift of the present, the learnings from those, the exercises that we do can help us really improve the depth to which we go in this meditation exercise. So let's use all of that. Let's remember what we wrote down are things that we worry about that will happen in the future, and things that we wish we did better in the past. And let's not engage with that. Let's be in the present. So the 3 levels of alignment is body, mind and spirit. The body alignment is the process. So the first P of alignment of the body is posture. So please sit in a posture that is comfortable to you, but yet reasonably erect. So align your spine with your neck, and don't slouch forward or back to the extent it is comfortable to your body. So that is the easiest part of the alignment. Second is, we have beats, we can pass them around, but if it's not there, just make this Jnana Mudra, it helps you increase focus. So second P of the alignment of the body is pronunciation. So we have been going through sound vibration and how sound vibration can help us transcend the material and connect back to something bigger than just us. So let us pronounce the 3 words again. You have been chanting the Mahamantra throughout this retreat. I know you know these words, but just for practice, please repeat after me. Hare, Hare. Krishna, Krishna. Rama, Rama. So the Mahamantra is, please repeat after me one time. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare. So that's the second P pronunciation. We went through proper time. We have been doing yoga early in the morning, and that's around the time of Brahma Muhurta. For thermodynamists like myself, it has been proven that mornings are entropically better for doing activities. I'm sure when you are younger, your parents woke you up in the morning to study and so on. So there is benefit in doing these things early morning. So those are the 3 P's of alignment of the body. The next is the alignment of the mind, and we have gotten a lot of tips from Maharaj on alignment of the mind. We yesterday stated the intention of the meditation exercise to help us align the mind. Let us do that again. To give you an example,
Anybody would like beads, we have extra. So raise your hand so we know how many we need. Keep your hand up. He'll come around with the beads. Thank you.
so while that is happening, I'll continue. So let us state the intention of this meditation exercise to ourselves. Let us really feel why we are doing this, and let's do it with that intention so that we get the full benefit. So for me, the intention of the meditation exercise today is to be in the present, engage with the sound vibration, not go to the past, not go to the future, just stay with the sound vibration. Nicely pronounce the word, hear the words of the Mahamantra, and really feel and be in the present with the Mahamantra. So whatever it is for you, please, I'll give you a second, state the intention to yourself. Alright, so the next tip that we went through yesterday is detachment, the art of letting go. Let's remember all the reasons we wrote down. It is important to let go, and we also had discussions around what we find is difficult to let go and so on and so forth. And just for the next 20 minutes or so, 15-20 minutes or so, let us try and consciously, deliberately try to let go of all our attachments. The attachment that we are the body, the attachment that we are the owner of whatever we own, a car or a house or whatever, the attachment that I am an IT software engineer or whatever you might be. You are just a part of the cosmos. You are an eternal spark of energy. You are not this body. So with that understanding, let's just chant the Mahamantra 5 times together. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Stop. So you would notice that when you are doing this, many thoughts come to your mind. Like we discussed earlier, some of you volunteered, and when is breakfast, why am I sleeping during a lecture, and so on and so forth. Let's really let go of those thoughts. All that really exists is now, and let's be in this moment. Let us focus on the sound vibration. So this is the beauty of meditating on the Maha Mantra. You have something to hold on to, something spiritual, something that connects you back to something bigger than us. So let's really hold on to the Maha Mantra. Let's hear what we chant. Let's pronounce the words nicely. And let's do this meditation exercise together 5 more times before we go through the alignment of the heart. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Stop. So alignment of the heart. Like I said yesterday, this is the most abstract, the most subtlest, and it has to be experienced. But theoretically, alignment of the heart is about connecting truly with the meaning of the mantra from our heart and chanting with feeling. So these words are not mundane words. They are not, if you chant Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola again and again, you won't get the same benefit. There has been research done that when you chant the Maha Mantra, you get many levels of benefit. So these words, Hare, Krishna and Rama, Hare, like I said yesterday, means the energy of the divine, and Krishna and Rama are the names of the divine, the infinite. And when we chant these words, the divine becomes present with us. So when we chant these words, let us be in the present. Let's let go of everything. There is nothing else that matters right now. Let us just be with the mantra and let's chant with that true feeling, understanding the meaning of the mantra. So for the next 10 minutes or so, we'll all chant together. I'll do one stop in the middle to increase the tempo. But here we go. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, shared the same. It was also a very, very long day. So I, like all of you, would really use the pickup, and this group chanting exercise really helps elevate my level of consciousness. So please help me, please join me in elevating this, everybody in this room, our level of consciousness. With feeling, with focus, being in the present, detached from material things, let us together rise together. So for the next 5 minutes, let's chant with an increased tempo. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Stop. So for the last few seconds, let us do the cosmic hug like we did yesterday. Please raise your hands up. And together, I don't know about you, I can use a hug from the cosmos. So let us together experience that at the top of your voice, as loud as you can. Let us chant the Maha Mantra for the next 30 seconds or so. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Thank you so much for joining us for the meditation exercise. I hope all of you are finding the retreat as beneficial as I am. So the team that puts this together, led by Maharaj, puts in a lot of effort into this event, and our only motivation is to help ourselves and help you through sound vibration, connect back to something higher than us. So please use this opportunity over the next 1.5 days to get as much as you can out of this retreat. Should we have some questions?
No time. Breakfast.
If you guys have any pressing questions, we can take 3 questions if that's okay.
Okay.
Any questions on the gift of the present, the art of letting go, or
Turn on the light. Turn on the light. The light. The light switch is right here. Ah. Nobody's going to fall asleep now.
Yes, so the art of letting go and being in the present of everything. What about when you have overwhelming emotions? Because the real world is real, like bills and different things, loved ones, or people that aren't necessarily on this same frequency that we attain to be on. So how do you still do that in the midst of the confusion?
Take a deep breath. That's what people that do anger management, it's like pranayama, you know what that is? Breathing. It releases some of the tension by air. Literally, biologically, physiologically. So that is at least it's a beginning, something to do to calm down the parasympathetic nervous system. So you get into the sympathetic nervous system where you can make some choices. And practice. Because you practice and practice and practice, and it's like that little example of making a path in the middle of the forest. It becomes second nature. Here you're walking down the path of life, and this is right from the internet, the parasympathetic nervous system. You're walking down, you're in a forest, here comes a bear. Fight or flight. You don't have to, the parasympathetic nervous system takes over.
So breathe.
Yeah, well, go to the, one of the things not to do when you see a bear is run. So if you're in reflective space rather than the panic space, you raise your arms, make your body look good, because I learned this. I was visiting Alaska once, and a girl told the story. She and her mother, they saw a moose running through and then all this noise behind the moose, and there was a bear. They saw the bear and they ran. The bear stopped chasing the moose and started chasing them. And the little girl ran faster than the mom. So the bear was hot on the track of the mom. So what did the mother do? She raised her arms and made her body, because bears can't see. Anyway, and she screamed up her lungs, "Jesus, save me." The bear stopped. Not I don't know if because she said Jesus saved me or because she looked really big, because that means you don't run. That's, so what's the right choice to make when you're walking down the path of life and here comes this negative thing happening? Then you've got this negative emotion, it's really powerful, and it's intelligence operate instead of the mind and senses operate. You become reactive. So go into reflective. But so those things to do to help you. And once you practice and practice and practice, it's second nature. Sometimes it's the mountain, sometimes it's a little bump, and sometimes it's somewhere in between, but you know what to do. You take guidance from the intelligence. And according to Bhagavad Gita, super soul, this we spoke about yesterday, gives intelligence. So, you know, we're not in that same frequency yet. So, okay, you don't get so in tune with super soul channel. But don't be reactive, be reflective. The second will help is literally 10 deep breaths. Okay, now what's the right thing to do in this circumstance? And the other thing, you know, is there a bigger plan out of all this? And this is awful. Anyway.
Thank you so much. This is all very new to me, so thank you. I have a question about the idea of impermanence. I can see that being very useful for letting dealing with things that hurt.
Yep.
But impermanence also, what about things that make you feel good? Things that make you happy? Impermanence also suggests that those things will go away as well. So it seems like a net neutral. It doesn't seem like a net positive if you lose the bad as well, with the good as well.
Great question. You're a good listener. I was noting. You're a good listener. Just to share. Every day, at least once and sometimes multiple times, I'm used to being in front of audiences. I'm a shy person by nature. I'm a private person by nature, but I have this years and years and years. So it's really easy to see when people are tuned in and tuning out. Anyway, I appreciate you. You're a tuned in listener. So, it's the carrot that says happiness. And that carrot, because of happiness, you buy into the duality that guarantees the other thing is going to happen too. So now, happiness, what is happiness? I was at a yoga studio in China. The yoga studio owner was giving like a little preamble to our students and staff. Anyway, what's happiness anyway? And if you buy into the senses contacting the objects of the senses, and there's a buzz, and that's happiness, then we're buying into the misery, because it's forgetfulness of who we are. So, really soon, as soon as we're done over here, you're going to go have breakfast, and I hope it's good. And it probably is good, because they made a lot of good plans for good meals. So, when you're eating, it's good. And some things maybe you like more than other things. That's natural. But it's really happiness, you're just eating things you like to eat. Or, so what's the standard of happiness? So, when you're doing things you like to do, maybe you like music, maybe you like, I don't know, whatever you like. Like eating, everyone likes to eat. So, doing things you like to do them with this kind of detachment, so that you can be in this reflective space of greater happiness. And when that greater happiness is accessed, because that's who you are, then you can engage in the world of duality with detachment, because it's impermanent. There's the experience of the duality. There's the good and there's the bad. There's the pleasure, there's the pain, there's the happy, there's the sad, there's the honor. You can recognize things, but it's not where your real happiness is. You don't become dull. You become more tuned into the temporary nature, the impermanent nature of this and that, by accessing the Param Nirshvana Bhagavad language, a higher pace, a greater happiness. And when that greater happiness, it was one of the texts from chapter 6, when that greater happiness is there, it's not a difficult choice. You can recognize the temporary happiness, the impermanent happiness. You can recognize the impermanent distress. You don't identify with it because there's a much greater happiness. But, so here's a little example. When I was a kid, I had a tricycle. So now I'm an adult, I can have some fun and sit on a tricycle and ride around on a tricycle for a little while. But after some time, it's that's enough, because there's a higher happiness for me than riding a tricycle. But when I was little, that was it. So when there's a higher happiness, it's easy to let go of the lesser happinesses. And if all you know is the lesser happinesses, that's lure, that you buy into the duality thing. Who you're not. Happiness is who I'm not. That's not happiness. There's a higher happiness. And when you experience so, it's deferred pleasure. There's a Sanskrit term, for those of you from India. There's short-term happiness and long-term happiness, just like going to school. Kids have to go to school at a certain age. They want to play. But there's another thing they have to do. Shreyas and prayas are the Sanskrit term. There's long-term happiness. And then this is like ultimate happiness. When you get closer to that ultimate happiness, even like a hint of it, the lesser happiness looks lesser because it is. So you can still do things that give happiness and distress, because we're in this world of duality. Nice sunny day. That's the other. So you participate in the nice sunny day. But there's a higher happiness inside, even when you're doing that. The long term. Okay, one other question. Yeah.
Hi, good morning. So I have a question about the mantra meditation and the video. I personally have my own mantra that I chant in the morning that I feel connected with, and I've been repeating this mantra. And in the video, it says that when you chant this mantra, you're being connected to your higher consciousness, and I just feel like there's this disconnect because I think it simplifies it. Like it says, if you chant this mantra, then you have access to this higher consciousness, and I'm chanting it, but I'm not feeling anything. And I know that it does take practice and that you have to do it over time. But I've been chanting this other mantra, which I do feel connected to.
Good.
And in those moments, I
Keep
feel
doing it.
okay. But like I'm not Ryan.
Yeah, you're you. And be you. Don't be Ryan, be you.
Right. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that I just feel like that is very oversimplified. Like I don't think that, like for me personally, having a mantra has not allowed me to have constant access to this higher consciousness the way that the video has portrayed it, is what I'm saying.
Well, I'm not sure what, let me ask for clarification, and then we're going to end so we have breakfast. I'm standing over here, so eye contact again. Are you saying that there's a disconnect because this Mahamantra hasn't done for you what it did for Ryan? Or are you saying the mantra that you're presently chanting doesn't connect you with that place of higher consciousness?
I think it's both. So my current mantra, when I'm chanting it, I feel connected, but that's only because in the moment I'm chanting it. And then this one, it's, you know, the video said that it allows you to connect to their higher consciousness, but I don't feel connected to this particular mantra. And then the third thing I actually wanted to mention was that, isn't a mantra almost like a form of distraction? Because instead of focusing on your worries and whatever is plaguing your mind, you just shifted it to something else, which at that moment is the mantra. But once you're away from the mantra, like everything comes, you know, flooding back.
So, subjectively, there was as I shared, during my college days, I was doing lots of different things, and including them as different mantras. And my subjective experience was that this Maha Mantra had a more sustainable connection with a place of higher consciousness than the other mantras, because the other mantras were, while engaged in or other meditation processes besides mantra, without listing them. There was no shelter to stay there, because the nature of the activity, even the other mantras, wasn't of the same nature. And my subjective experience was Maha Mantra throughout the day, when I was in school or with people or whatever, living life, eating, brushing my teeth. That consciousness was still present. I felt it. Therefore, I leaned more, just from experience, experimenting, leaned more towards Maha Mantra than the other mantras and the other processes. Because I wanted to experience that connectedness, so that you haven't experienced that to date. You gave one of the answers why. It takes some time. But if there's a mantra that worked for you, by all means continue. It's not like, there's that mantra, your mantra. It's not like that. Not like that. But this is within the Upanishads, it mentions this mantra of mantras in this age of Kali. It's most effective. That's my subjective experience. That's what the Upanishad says. I'm happy with it. And if you're happy with another mantra, fantastic. It's not like something's wrong with you. Maybe.
Right.
It's not like that.
How do you, I guess, what are your thoughts on my last point, which is that when you're chanting the mantra in the moment, like you can focus on the mantra, but once you're done chanting the mantra, it's like everything else that you placed to the side temporarily, your worries and your concerns and what you want in the future, they just come, like they didn't go away. I mean, you just store them.
When here's the Sanskrit. Cheto darpanam arjanam. So when you take my Apple Watch tells me what's the quality of air here in Fort Royal. When the air becomes 100% clear, you feel it. When there's I was in Jaipur, and it was extremely unhealthy, taking Ayurvedic treatment. Extremely unhealthy. So when your mind becomes pure, while being present with the mantra, your mind is still pure after you finish the mantra. You're in a class, and you're not chanting the mantra because you're attending the class or doing something on your computer or whatever it is you're doing. But that clear mind stays with you, and you can access the self, that happiness within, because the mind has become clear. It's with you. It stays with you. And when you go back and revisit it, but it's not only when you're doing the mantra meditation, and then it's not. Because the self is connected with that place. And the connection doesn't stop when the mantra meditation stops. It's with you. The mind is clear.
So we're going to add